And today we want to also focus on the Word of God, as we are finding more of the encouragements, more of the insights that we can can be motivating us to reach out and be more effective in ministering to people. I want to take you today to the first Kings chapter 18. The whole chapter is basically a message here, or you can read the whole chapter later on. I will just refer to some of the points there. This is a situation where Elijah is confronting King Ahab. Israel was going through the series of slip-aways from God, and gradually, step by step, maybe imperceptibly or maybe perceptibly, the people were going away and relaxing on their commitment to God and embarking on commitment to something else. I will not call it other gods, but that's what it was. Instead of being committed fully to the God, the Creator, they started slipping up, looking at those around them, and asking themselves, why not? If they can do it, why can't I? Happens around us. In our commitment, in our spiritual commitment, we may be tempted to do similar way. Ahab is becoming a king after Omri, and we are told that Ahab was doing the wrong in the sight of the Lord. Things are slipping up, and then the Lord sent a message that there will be drought in the country, and we can resonate to that. There may be some parallels here. We may wonder why sometimes things are not going the way they should. Why are we experiencing crisis? Why are we experiencing drought? Here is Israel that is going through a period of drought. The prophet has announced that there will be no rain. And the prophet was told in chapter 17 that he should find himself a place in a place where he would be hiding, where he would be fed by ravens. And when the stream have dried out, he would be fed by ravens with bread, and he would have water from the stream. But when the stream eventually dried out, he was sent to the widow of Zarephath. That's another sermon. But that's how God was looking after his people, how God was looking after the prophets. In meantime, the king and his wife were doing, how should we call it? They were doing internal national cleansing. They were getting rid of the people who were not comfortable. They were getting rid of the people who were maybe uncomfortable. They were annoying them. Isabel massacred the prophets of the Lord, but there were people who were still involved in quietly, privately. They were involved in hiding the prophets of God here and there. And one of them was Obadiah, a servant of, or right hand of the king Ahab, who has hidden about 100 prophets into different caves. We are told that he have hidden 50 in each cave, and he was feeding them with bread and water. He was doing everything, he was doing all of that privately, while he was serving the king himself. And we come to the beginning of chapter 18, where Elijah is told by the Lord that he should go and see the king, because he's going to send rain. And you can imagine, if you were the prophet, after 3 years of the situation that you had, where that there is a drought in the country, there is hardly any water, and the king and his servant, they are basically getting together. When king unites himself with his servant in order to search water for their horses and for their own, so they will not lose their stock, they go opposite directions. And now God tells him God tells the prophet, go and see Ahab. What would be going through your mind if you were the prophet? What would be going through your mind if you knew that for 3.5 years, or even before that, king was after your blood? Would you listen to the voice of God? No, he was hiding there. God was in miraculous way protecting him, preserving him. But now he is told, go and see. Go, present yourself to Ahab. We are reading in verse 1. And I will send rain on earth. Would you listen to this voice? Or maybe you would be checking like Gideon, did you have the right reception? Or something went on with hearing you wrong way? Because God could send the rain without actually prophet going to see Ahab, true? Everything would be all right. He wouldn't have to show his face. But Elijah is sent, and while the two, that is Obadiah and Ahab, are going separate ways, going to different parts of the country, the prophet is going on his way to see Ahab, and somehow God directs the way. So Obadiah and Elijah are meeting somewhere in the bush or wherever, and surprise, surprise. Obadiah is shocked because they could not see the trace of Elijah for years. And now, why it happened that you met me? I was asked by the king to actually go and search for you. And for all these years, I was coming with nothing. And now I have to find you. You know what it means to me? And not enough on that, Elijah is, thank you for coming, bless you. Elijah is telling Obadiah, go to the king and tell him that I want to see him. And then Obadiah, trembling, he goes, how have I sinned? How have I sinned that you are giving me this job? How have I sinned against you? What have I done to you that you are sending me to a certain death? King have sent messages to, he was searching all over the country. He was searching outside of the country. He had sent messages to surrounding nations and was getting vowing them that they are telling the truth, that they are not hiding the prophet in their own territories. Now you are telling me, go to see Ahab and tell him that he is there. And then the Holy Spirit will take you somewhere else, and I will bring the king to you to this side, and you will not be there because you will be in some other place, in some other country. That will end up with, that's it. But he says, no, just go. He ascertained Obadiah that he will be here when the king comes, and so it goes that he is coming. And verse 17, we go to verse 17. Then it happened when Ahab saw Elijah that Ahab said to him, "Is that you, O troubler of Israel?" This is the moment where they are meeting. You see, For 3 years there was no rain. The drought had been severe, and Jezebel was persecuting the prophets. King and servants have united in effort to solve the situation, and and definitely for the prophet it looked dangerous to go and see the king himself. But God had a purpose. It came to the point where God had to be proved. That God had to be proved and who he is. Obadiah was sent back to Ahab, and now we are getting to the point where both are meeting. Ahab is meeting, the biggest enemies are meeting. In astonishment mingled with terror, king is facing the prophet. For king at the back of his mind knows that the prophet is speaking for God. But all other circumstances are telling him to do something else. Where is he going to stand? He is listening. He knew that Obadiah would not come just for nothing. He well knew that Elijah would not endanger life of Obadiah and merely for the sake of meeting him. Could it be possible that the prophet was about to utter another woe, another judgment? Could it be possible that he had a more dramatic picture coming up his way? What now? Prophet is going to tell him, because in the past he was only bringing bad news. He also remembered that one of the kings was so proud, and he was not holding back from raising his hand against another prophet, Jeroboam, and his hand dried up. So that the same prophet had to pray in order that God would remove the judgment or the punishment. So he, on one hand, he wants to do the right thing. On the other hand, he would like to raise his hand, but he is afraid to raise his hand against prophet. And so, accompanied with bodyguard, like a sheepish person, he is coming and meeting. No longer he is proud. No longer he wants to pose as a king. Elijah was taking the step because Ahab had been a loose king. He was basically a person that would not stand up to what he should be standing up. He was manipulated. He kept listening to his wife, who had her own principles, who had her own persuasions, who had her own spirituality, and she was enforcing it in his own country. That was the situation. A couple of chapters further, we find the way of operation of the queen. When you go to 1 Kings chapter 21, there is a situation with Naboth. And when Jezebel finds out that there is a problem with this citizen, what does she go for? She writes a letter in the name of king, and then seals it with the seal of the king, and sends it to the national leaders and neighbors of Naboth and king, because they were neighboring. And Naboth, the king wanted to have the field of Naboth, so that was the issue there. She does it, beside the king. She does it in the name of the king. That is how she is operating. She is basically having him like a puppet. And then we go to verse 7, in verse 17, and here Ahab is accusing Elijah of being the troubler of Israel. And when we are looking there, this is the situation that first, he was maybe faltering, but in his words, but as he is saying this statement, he is actually conscious or unconscious. He is spelling out what's going on in his mind, what is his persuasion. You troubler of the nation of Israel. And you see, this is the situation. Evil and justice needs to be confronted, must be confronted. There will be time of sitting on the fence, and the time will come where one and the other, justice and evil, will be confronted, where things will have to be polarized and things will have to be identified, who is who. Verse 17, is that you, O troubler of Israel? And he answered, I have not troubled Israel, but you and your father's house have, in that you have forsaken the commandments of the Lord and have followed the Baals. Can you sense the confidence in the voice of the prophet, of Elijah? It wasn't me that troubled or that troubles Israel, but it's you and your family. Standing there in conscious innocence, he was standing before Ahab. He did not waver. Elijah makes no attempt to excuse his actions. He is just saying, it's you who is the troubler of Israel and your family, and you need to take responsibility for it. And so the king is now confronted with where he is standing. Ahab had failed to worship God of creation, and he had bent down, or he had compromised to go on with the popular thinking, with what was politically correct, with what was getting the problems away from his back. God alone was the one who was in charge of everything. And today, there is need of voice of stern rebuke. Because, when we are looking at this world, we are going the same way. When we are going into syncretic way, where everything is permissible. Everything is okay. There are grievous sins that have separated people from God. And God is the God of all creation. It doesn't matter what color we are. Doesn't matter what nation we are. But God is responsible for every breath in our lungs. He is the giver. So for that we are responsible. We are accountable for him. And the unfaithfulness grows in our society. And the fashionable thought of the time is that we will not have this man to reign over us. We will choose somebody else. Which man? God and Jesus Christ, isn't it? We will not have this man reign over us. That's what Jews said about Jesus. But that is the popular thought of today. The smooth sermons are often preached, and there is no lasting impression that we are responsible for everything to God. The trumpet does not give a certain sound, and people are not worried. People are staying in the soft, peaceful sleep. It is not for love, for neighbor, for brother and sister, that this is what's happening. Here we have prophet Elijah, who is standing there before the king and telling him, you are responsible for all the situation in the nation. When souls are in peril, you as a leader are responsible for it. And that was definitely what was happening. So Elijah warns them, and he basically tells them, hey, the time has come where you cannot any longer sit on the fence and waver between two options. As you keep on reading, we are reading verse 19. Now therefore send and gather all Israel to me on Mount Carmel, and 450 prophets of Baal, and then 400 prophets of Ashereth, who eat at Jezebel's table. He is spelling out who is feeding who. You are denying one side, You're denying the creator God and you are feeding something else. You're responsible for it. So the challenge that Elijah presented to the king, and it cannot be rejected. The proposal of Elijah to test and prove where the truth lies is so reasonable that people cannot reject it. The priests of Baals are astonished, and they did not speak for themselves. They have no courage to answer. King or prophet Elijah is confronting them, and he is asking them what's the situation. If God is the God, then follow him. If Baal is the prophet, then follow Baal. And people did not answer. Do you know why people did not answer? Any idea? Probably because down in their heart, they knew what's the truth. But on the surface, they didn't want to deny the popular truth, the political correctness. They were not prepared to take the risk. But Elijah says it's not good enough. You need to make choice. The lack of choice is also a choice. And we cannot have it any longer. There would be no middle ground. And we find this happening around us. We often are sitting on the fence. We are taking the soft approach. And today people are encouraged to have that syncretic view that was present in the times of Roman Empire, where all religions, all gods were allowed. There was a whole pantheon of gods which were worshipped by whoever chose to worship, and it was all right. They were given the option to worship whatever they want to, and in actual fact worship nothing. That was the choice. As long, we hear statements like that, as long as you worship something, it's okay. And we've got the ethics that you need to have higher authority. So on ethical grounds, we reject God. Because we allow ourselves to have higher authority, and it can be anything. You know what? There is a saying, too many cooks, you know it. Okay? If there is many gods, none of them can be responsible. And if there is only one God, creator, he can be responsible for good or for bad. And our God is responsible for both, and he will take care of it, and he will have a judgment. Because he is responsible. He gives enough time for mercy. But he will one day take it to the judgment. And you know what? When I was in India, I learned about these hundreds and thousands of gods. And you know what? When I was listening to people talking about it, I could not avoid that these gods are blaming one another for what's going on. So if you have trouble in one situation, you go to the other god. It's God of creation is not like that. He is God who takes care for everything. He gives time, he gives mercy, he gives second chance. But he is responsible. So the challenges of Elijah certainly apply to us. What do we want to do? It's time to give up on gods who are promising everything and providing nothing. It's time to stand on and give credit to the one who gives everything. Materialism, prestige, power, intellectualism, all these kind of things are maybe gods or promises of gods, but all that is delivering nothing. It's empty. And how often have you heard, it doesn't matter what you believe as long as you are sincere? You can be sincerely wrong. It can happen. Again in India, a person who was helped by a Christian out of drugs, he says, Why do I have to do it in the name of Jesus? And then the person directed him to the scripture which says, I chose you, not you didn't choose me, but I chose you. That's gospel. God have chosen you and me to be saved, and he paid for it. That's why this is the authority, this is the credit where it needs to go. I chose you, not you that have chosen me. That's where where truth needs to come to the surface. The object of your faith is everything. It's not like it doesn't matter. And in verse 27, we are told here that this is the issue. And so it was at the noon that Elijah mocked them and said, you know what? Elijah encouraged the prophets of Baal and the whole gathering there that they will provide for themselves a bull, and they will prepare an altar, and they will pray that God will respond with the fire burning that sacrifice. All day they are preparing and praying and making quite a scene. They are making quite a commotion around it. Nothing happens. Around noon, Elijah, we are told, Elijah mocked them and said, "Cry aloud, for he is a God." Either he is meditating, he is deep in his meditations, whatever. Or he is busy, or he is on the journey, or perhaps he is sleeping and must be awakened. You know what he is saying? He is giving them the logic that they used to repeat. If he is God, he will be in charge every second of it. Okay? Oh, they keep shouting louder. And he is encouraging them to, and they keep going and nothing happens. And then he says, well, you had the time, you had most of the day to prove. Your God has had most of the day to prove. And towards the evening, time of sacrifice, he says, okay, your time for show and tell is over. Now it's my turn. In other words, basically. And he is giving the directions how the altar has to be prepared. And he's pouring water, just to make sure that there would be no spark somewhere generated and that people would claim that his sacrifice was accident, or that his God's response would be accident. When the contest begins, the prophets of Baal are confident, but then they are starting to lose confidence, and Elijah is taking charge. You can be sincere, but you can be sincerely wrong. And Elijah gathers people around himself and raises prayer to God. And as he is going, as he is praying, he did not even quite finish his prayer, but the fire comes and consumes the sacrifice, consumes the meat, consumes all wood and stones. He is the creator God who responded according to his power, with fire according to that. The world in general is growing ever bolder in worshipping everything else. We can see that happening around us. But God has his people who are marked. Like Elijah was the marked man in search, who was the wanted man. They were after him. And so it will be. The wrongdoers will always put responsibility on those who are faithful to God. That was the situation with Ahab. He was the wrongdoer and he put the blame on Elijah. That's how it happens over and over. When you look at beginning of the history, Cain blamed Abel for doing what for good that Abel did. And throughout the history, you've got those who were massacred because they were standing on what's right. And this is the story, the history of this world did not finish, and the worst has not come yet. It's there ahead of us. If in the time of Daniel, the king established his decree and he signed it with his seal. There was a sign of belonging to God. He cannot, that the law cannot be changed. And Daniel was responsible. Daniel was loyal to God. In the past, as it is today, documents are affixed by seal. That is basically marking that somebody is actually genuine. That that there is high quality, there is originality. And that mark is binding the producer with the product. So if there is problem with the product, you go to the producer. And God is taking responsibility for his product. And he wants to have people who are representing him, who are witnessing of him. Jezebel sealed letters with Ahab's signature, with Ahab's seal. And even though Ahab did not sign or seal these documents, he had to be responsible for what was signed. He had to take responsible. Another example was in the times of Esther, when the decree was against one of the citizens of the country, and Haman issued letters in the name of the king, and he sealed it with the king's Ahasuerus' signature or with his seal. Both kings had to be responsible even though they did not write the letters. And this is the situation. How do we know who issued the 10 Commandments? How do we know if we are following, who are we loyal to? And how do we know that what we are following, that it is coming from the genuine source? How do we know who gave us the 10 Commandments? Because the law is a representation of the king who is governing the kingdom, isn't it? How do we know? It's there, in the middle, right in the middle of the 10 Commandments. There is a name, territory, and an authority of the one who gave the law. It's the 4th commandment that is told to be the seal of God. And with that seal, he is marking the people who are genuine. We need to, number one, to be genuine in order to be marked by his seal. And that, when we are going, we consider Sabbath as the hallowed day as a mark between God and his people. God has his people who are marked, and eventually they will be wanted. But they will stand firm, faithful to God. We've got a number of places in the Bible where we have similar statements marking. We've got one in Exodus 31 that says, "Surely my Sabbaths you shall keep, for it is sign between me and throughout your generation, that you may know that I am the Lord who sanctifies you." What was the accusation of Ahab towards Elijah? That you are the troubler of the nation. What's the job what's the promise that God is giving to about his people? That he is the one who sanctifies, not troubles the people. That's his mark. And when we are accepting God's authority, we are accepting his law. Verse 17 again in the same chapter says, "It is the sign between me and my children of forever. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, and on the 7th day he rested and was refreshed." The connection between God and his people is that he was creator and they were his creation. He was the producer and they were the product. So, if we have complained to anyone, about the product, you go to the producer. That's the connection. Prophet Daniel was predicting that there will be times to change, that the times will come where change of law and the times would arrive. In Daniel chapter verse 27, we read that the pompous words will be spoken against Most High, and he will persecute the signs of the Most High, and shall intend to change times and law. Then the signs shall be given into the hand for a time, times, and half a time. We can study the subject later, but this is indicating the time will come where somebody, when the world will be trying to change time and the law. Isn't it happening when other things become priority rather than the law of God? While worshippers of God will be especially distinguished by protection, by regard for his commandments, the worshippers of the systems of this world, because that's how you can summarize it, by worshippers of the systems of this world will be distinguished by the efforts to tear down the law, the Creator's memorial, and the law of Creator. That's how they will be distinguished, and only human institution will be uplifted and encouraged to be respected. We can see many situations, many statements that are confirming that. One of them I find, and I will read to you, as a sign of the authority of the church, the very act of changing from Sabbath to Sunday, into which Protestants also allow, by keeping Sunday, they acknowledge the church's power to ordain feasts and to command them under sin. There is an abridgment of the Christian doctrine quoted. This is efforts that were already done, and we are living in this reality. It will, and we are told that it is not until the issue of plainly set before the people, until the issue is plainly set before people, then they will be brought to choose between loyalty and allegiance to God or allegiance to humans, to something else. They will be brought into the situation where they will have to choose between listening to the commandment of men or listening to the commandment of God. And those who continue to listen to the commandment of men will eventually be marked with different mark, but not mark of allegiance to God. It would be allegiance to this world. And that's where the sitting on the fence will finish. We are going through times of testing. We are going through times where we have to prepare ourselves and ask ourselves a question: who do I want to follow? Do I want to follow God and Him alone? Or do I want to look and compare myself with everyone else, what they are doing, and condition my choices on what they are doing? May God bless each one of us. May He will give us courage that as Elijah we will be able to stand and make a right choice, that which God will honor by standing behind it, even if it takes to cast the fire down, like He did in times of Elijah. And He will not falter, He will not fail. He will stand by His people as He was standing by Elijah. May God bless each one of us. This is my prayer. This is my wish for each one of you. Amen.